You can go with the current one, but I would recommend you to go with the recommended one. So once you install with that, now you are ready to start working on the project. Now first thing, you have to create a folder, and we'll call it crypto bot. And in this we're going to write all the code. So before you start writing the code, you have to get the startup file. So come back to the blockchain coder. Here you will find all the resources which I have provided for this project, so you can start working straight away. So it has all the assets and the npm packages. So come back to this and check all the project we have on the channel. Click here, go back to the source code, and here you will find all the project we have built on our channel. So I believe that you guys have followed some of the project. If not, then check that. So click here, go to the recent project, and here you will find all the upcoming project which I'm going to publish on the channel. So we have all of this, and this is what we're going to work on this particular video. So click here, and you will come back to this. From here you can easily able to get the final source code which I show you the demo, and you can get the startup file. So we need to get the startup file to start working together. So click here, it's going to take you here, and you can simply check everything. Here I have provided all the information which you need to know. So come back and simply copy the URL, and we're going to simply clone this repository. So copy this one and open your VS Code, go to open, go to desktop, and you have to pick the folder we have created. So this is the folder, click and open. Now expand this one and close this one, and now open up your terminal. Let me bring this down and open up your terminal and simply clone the repository. So type git clone and paste the URL and give this dot. This means that you're going to clone the repository in the same directory. If you don't provide this dot, it's going to create a new folder, which I don't want. So hit enter. This will happen very quickly. Here we have simply cloned the entire repository. Simply close this terminal, and now let me take you through this entire folder and file structure which I have designed for this particular project. First thing is remove this one because we don't need this. And now the very first folder we have in our project is the API, because we are using backend for the authentication purpose, allowing user to log into application and create an account. So we have controller, in that we have this auth controller. Right now we don't have anything because we're going to start working together. Then we have the models, in that we're going to define what are the information we want to take from the user as a authentication. Then we have the router, where we're going to keep all the routers, all the endpoint for our backend. Then these are the three folder we have in the API. Now we have to come back to the component, in that we have two different type of component. The body component, so we have all of this component which we have to code together. So this is the body component, and this is the global component, which is going to be available almost in every single pages. And here we're going to simply import all the component. Then we have the context, in that we have these two files, constants and context. In this I have given some important codes which we're going to utilize in our project. So we have the router address and port address, and we have the API of this particular provider. So these are the addresses are same no matter which network you pick, because we are using Uniswap SDK and the contract which is deployed on Uniswap in all the network, and it has the same addresses. So that's what we are utilizing here. And we have this ABIs which we have taken from this particular addresses, so we can utilize and make the call. So this one is quoter, and this one is the token. Pretty simple. So these are the important data we have here in the constant. So this is the thing you have to keep in mind. If you have any confusion, you can check the Uniswap doc, and that they have mentioned all the addresses of the contract which is deployed in different network. So from there I got this addresses. Now we have the context, we're going to code everything. We have the pages, this is the app.js, nothing in here. We have the index, we don't have anything in here, and simply close that one. And now come back to the public. Here I have provided all the relevant resources which we're going to utilize in our project. So we have the CSS file, we have the plugin, and we have the custom styling which we have already done. Then we have the images. So we have multiple images. You can see this is the images for the galleries. We have the dark icon. You can use it as a dark or as a light mode. I have provided you all the icon, but I'm going to work on the dark section. This is the light icon which I have given to all of you guys. Now we have the models, in that you will have all of these images. We have the network, so you can put as many network as you want. All you have to do is to paste the image, and you can simply call it. Then we have the related, then we have the user, and we have two different type of icons. One is this tech web, and the other one is CryptoBot. You can use whichever you want. I'm going to use the combination of both. So you will guys will have the flexibility and you can use as per your choice. Looks pretty good. So this is what you will get in the public file. Now come back to the styles, and the global styles I have already written a couple of CSS. It's just a basic one. We have the loader, we have the circle, and we have animation. These are the simple CSS I have written, and we have installed all, we have received all the plugins here, and that's coming from this particular CSS file. We have the selector, media query, this is the loader, close this one, this is the new wrap, new circle, this is the keyframe, close this one. We have the new shadow, keyframe, new shadow, and shadow. So these are the CSS we have written. It's just a basic one for having some specific color. Now close this one. This is what we have, and now we have to work on this. We're going to build a couple of utility function which allow us to receive and use the function over and over again in our contract, in our bot. And here we have the get ignore, so whatever files you don't want to push to get up, that's all I have highlighted here. And here we're going to write the API app.js. Here we're going to do the configuration. This configuration is very important because we are using MongoDB as a backend server for storing the information about the user. So we need to get the database URL and the password, and this three information I have provided, like JWT secret. You can type any text, is totally up to you, but make sure the length should be 32. And here we have the expiry and expiring. So this is the two data we have to get right now. I'll show you how you can get that. Just follow along with me. But this particular string should be greater than 32. That's the only thing you have to keep in mind. Now come back the Next.js config file. So this will remain same. This is the package.json file, and this is very important. No matter when you are building this project, as long as you use the exact package version, everything will be working fine. If you not use the exact package, that's going to create a problem. So this is the name I have given. This is the setup you have to do in the script file, because we're going to start the backend server and the front end in the same domain, in the same root domain. So this is the exact configuration you have to do. We are using this nodemon, which I will tell you that what benefit you will get when you will use this nodemon, because whenever you will save the file, it will restart your server. So we have multiple configuration I have done. So this is what I have provided, and here we have the entire package.json file. In that we are using multiple package for different purposes, which I will explain when we'll start going to use it. Then we have this readme file. Here I have provided some important links, so you can check that. And the final, we have the server file, which is going to be the starting point of our application. So I hope so far things are clear to all of you guys. You guys have understood that what folder and file structure we are using, what are the resources you have given, and how you can start working on the project. So let's start with that. So first thing what we have to do is open up our terminal, and we have to install all of these packages. So simply type npm install or npm I. It will install the package very quickly, and just wait, it will happen very quickly. You can see I have installed the package very quickly and everything's working fine. And if you have encountered any error, I would recommend you to install the package one by one, but you won't face any issue as long as you follow this particular process which I have told you. Now once you install the packages, now what you have to do is come back here, close this one, and first we have to start working on our server. So things are looking pretty good, no issue I have so far. Now what I'm going to do is come back here in the app.js, and we can come back to the configuration, and first let's get our database string and the password, because without that we're not able to build the connection with the backend and we can start working on the project. So first we have to get the database password and database string. So for that, come back here, open a new tab, and simply type MongoDB. And this one is really powerful, and if you master MongoDB, then that will teach you a lot of things. So I have a complete course on MongoDB. It's a 14 hours long playlist I have built on YouTube, which you can follow to master MongoDB, where we have built the backend API for NFT marketplace. So this is what we have. Simply scroll and you can check that what are the methods are available which you can call it, like aggregate pipelines, tons of things we have here. So I'm going to start with the free account. You will get exactly the same interface. Maybe you are watching after 1 year or 2 years, the interface will be changed, but the process is exactly the same. Now click here, try free, and here is going to ask you to pick your account. So I'll sign with Google, and I'm going to pick my account. You can pick your choice. Once you will create, it will take few seconds, and finally it's going to ask you a couple of things. So please say agree, and click on submit. And just wait, it's going to take few seconds and it's going to redirect and create your cluster. So it's creating your cluster in the backend. Just wait for few seconds, and finally it has created your first cluster. And here they are asking you few information about the project. So what is your primary goal? So let's see what we want to do. So you can pick anything. I'll select this one. Let's select this in less than a year, and let's select this Node JavaScript and Node.js. Click that one, and here we have this particular one. And what we can choose, we can pick, you can pick anything. Click select other, and let's come back here. This one is optional, and the last one is going to be the microservice, yeah, because we are building just for testing purpose. And click on finished, and here they have closed. And as if you have your fresh account, it's going to pop up this particular interface where you can select your first cluster and create a project. So they provide three options like M10 serverless and M0, which is a free cluster, but it will give you a like 512 memory. That is sufficient to build this particular project. So we have this three option, and they have all of the setups. So if you want to go with this, or you can go with this, I will go with the free one. Select this one, or you can pick any one of this. Here they have multiple options, so whether you want to use Amazon provider, Google cloud provider, or AN provider, it's totally up to you. You can simply click here, like you can change. If you like, I will go with the AWS, and from here you can able to select the region where you want to locate your database center. So I'm from India, so obviously I will go with the Hyderabad, but if you are somewhere else, you can simply pick your location near to your country. So I'll go with the Hyderabad, and I'll change the name of this cluster. I call it something like crypto bot, or you can keep it as it is. It will be the same. And now the rest should be fine. So I'll click on this free version, and I'm going to click on this create. It's going to create my first cluster, the project. And this is very important. You have to provide this username and password, and you have to save somewhere in safe place. So this is the username, which I will simply copy, and I'm going to keep in my .env file. So come back here in the VS Code, and here I'm going to keep it. So simply comment this one. This is the name, username of the project, and I have to change the password. I'm not going to use the exact one. I will keep it something simple. I'll say like let's call it crypto bot, and that's the password I will use. Simply copy and simply keep it here and comment this one. Once you do this two things, now you have to click on this create user, and here they will open this particular pop-up model. So if you want to add specific IP address from where you can locate and access this API, you can simply add all the APIs, but by providing, you can provide all this address and description and simply add it. But I will make it global so I can access from anywhere. So simply click on this finished and close, and click on close, and this one is will open close. So here it's creating the database. Just wait for a few seconds, and finally the database created. Now we have to change the accessibility. So I want to access my database from any IP address. I can restrict it to one IP address for security purpose. If you want to provide more security, you can do that, but as a development point of view, I'm going to make it access from anywhere, any API. So come back here in the network access. This is my API address. I'll click on this edit, and from here I will click on this allow access from anywhere, and this will change the API, and click on this confirm. So now I can able to access this API, this backend server, from any IP address. So make sure to do this particular configuration if you're using multiple network to connect and access and build this particular project. So that's the thing you have to keep in mind. So here we have changed this API accessibility, and come back to the database, and here we have to get couple of information. So you can see we have this connect, view monitoring, and browse collection. So all the information, all the user, all the asset which you will store, that's all you will find in the browse collection. So you can click and you can able to have all the details. Right now we don't have any data, that's why you can see this is the information we get, but once we have the data, it will display the data of that user. So now we have to simply connect. So click on this connect, and it's provide you multiple option to connect with the database. Like the first one is we have is the driver, the second one is the compass, cell, and the MongoDB and Atlas SQL. So we're going to use the MongoDB for VS Code. So click on that, and this is the string we need, this string. Simply copy this one, and that's what we have to simply pass in our .env variable. So simply copy this, and now we have to pass it here in the database string, and make sure to replace this one because we're going to use write the password of our database. So simply replace with this capital password, and this is the database string, and now we have to simply copy the password. So this is the database string, this is the password, and here we have that one. So once we get that, simply close this one, and that's the only thing we have to do here. Now we already have a password, simply copy this one, and that's what we have to pass here. So how our database string got formatted: first we have the username, then we have the password, then we have the project name. So far things are pretty clear to all of you guys. Now save it, and that's the only thing we have to do here. So we are done with all the setups for the backend part. Now we can start writing the code for our project. So this is done, close this one, and this is done, close this one, and now we can start working on our project. So come back to the API. So this is the structure which I'm going to follow. First we'll work on the authentication part, where we're going to build the logic, the entire functionality of our backend. Then we're going to move to login credential, like creating account and logging. So let's start with the API first. So come back to the controller, auth controller, and here we have to build all the logic like login, sending the token, using the JWT token. That's all we're going to build it here. So let's start working on it. So first we have to import the JWT, and that's coming from the JSON web token. Now we have to import the user model, which we're going to use to allow and validate the data for the user, and that's coming from the model, user model. So these are the two things we need here as a package to work on our system which we're going to build it. Now before we start continuing with the auth controller, we have to build the model, and that's what we're going to work next. So come back here, let's start working on the model here, and let's start building on it. So first we have to simply import the mongoose, and that's coming from the mongoose. Simply import the mongoose. Once we have the mongoose, now we have to import the bcrypt, because we have to encrypt the data before we store in our database. And the reason why I'm following this particular strategy, because sometimes what happen if someone's trying to access your database, means your database got hacked. So what will happen, the hacker will not able to access the user information. They cannot able to log in because the password is not in straight format, it's encrypted. So that's the strategy you have to pick always. You have to encrypt the password. You can encrypt anything, but here we are focusing on the password because the process is exactly the same. So first we have to import the package. We'll say bcrypt. Then we have to use this user schema. So this is the general structure we have to follow when we have to use mongoose for generating the model and what are the information we want to take. So this is the schema which I'm designing. I'm calling it user schema. You can call whatever you want. Let's call this new mongoose, and we'll call it schema. In that we have to provide all the data field, all the information we want to take. So the first one is going to be the name, and in that we have to assign couple of validation point, that what type of name we want. So we're going to say that type is going to be a string, and it's a required field because user has to provide their name. So we'll say required true, and we're going to display the message if the user not provide the name. So we'll say please tell your name. So this is the one field, the name, and this all I have covered extensively in the NFT marketplace course API. So come back here and go to the YouTube, and you will find under the playlist, this is the playlist which I'm talking about. In that we have covered every single thing which you have to know about the MongoDB and how to build advanced API. So I would suggest you to first complete this project, understand, and after that take this particular one API course. In that you will master backend development. So in that I have explained everything. So looks pretty fine to me. Now come back in the code. So this is the one field we have. Now we have to take the name as well. So I'll take this. So we are done with the name. Now we have to take the email. So we'll say email. Type is going to be string, and it's a required field. I'll say true. Please provide your email. Then it's going to be a unique. That's how we are validating, because every single email has to be unique. And we'll say to lowercase. In that way it would be easy for us to make the comparison and verify whenever we do in our application. So this is the email. Now once we're done with the email, we have to take the membership type, because we are also selling membership. So type is going to be string, and it will be the lowercase to true, and we'll say by default is going to be no member. not member. So this is the membership type. Now we have to work on the role, because we can have multiple role, but I will go with the two role like admin and user. So let's call this one, type is going to be string, and we'll take this enum. We'll have the two type of user and admin, and by default I will assign the user. Pretty good. This is the role, and now we have to work on the password and confirm password. So we'll say password, we'll say type is going to be string, required is going to be the true, and we'll display the error message, please provide your password. And now we have to work on the password confirm. Same thing, it's going to take this type string, and we have the required field, please provide your password, and it's going to have a validator, because when the user will provide the password and confirm password, we have to validate that. And this confirm password we are not storing in the database, it's just for validation. So let's build a small function, we'll call it validator, and it's going to be a normal function, not an async function. That's the thing you have to keep in mind, because if you use the async function, we're not able to use this keyword. So we call this validator, and we'll use this normal function. In that we'll pass the element, means the password, and here we have to simply return. So we'll say element equal to this dot password. So this is a small validator we have built for the confirm password. So far good, and we have to display the error message if it's not validated. So we'll say please passwords are not the same as. So this is the password confirm validator we have. So what we have done so far, we have installed these two packages, then we have built this particular model like name, email, we have membership type, we have the role, we have the password, and we have the confirm password with this validator. So far things are good, and now we have to work on the schema model, because we have to perform certain actions, certain check before we actually allow user to create account or log in our application. So this is the model we have designed, and now we have to build the schema model called middleware. We're going to have multiple middleware. Let's build that. So we'll call this user schema, and then this is the name we have to provide, because on that we have to build. And here we have to call this pre. And can you guess why I'm using this pre hook? Because this particular middleware will run before the data will save in our database. So that's why I'm calling pre. So we have multiple way, pre, post, that what kind of action you want to provide with this middleware. So we want to run this middleware pre, and in that we'll say save. So before it save, we have to execute this middleware. So I'll call this async function, and in that we'll have this next. And here we have to do a couple of check. So first thing is that we have to check only run this function if the password was actually modified. What I mean by this, that I have to check that whether the user have changed their password or not. If they have changed, then we have to execute it. Otherwise we have to simply pass to the next middleware. So that's a very simple logic. We'll say if this dot is modified, means if it's false, and we have to pass the name of the field password which we are targeting. So if the password is not modified, and that's what we are targeting here, then we have to simply return to the next. In that way what will happen, it will move to the next middleware. That's why we have this next. That's pretty simple. Again, everything I have covered extensively in the API course, so you guys can follow that, because there I have given multiple example, but in this we are just focusing on the logic and we are building it. So this is the first condition. Now let's work on the second condition, has the password with cost of itna. Now we have to encrypt the password, because we have installed the bcrypt function, because we have to encrypt the password and then we have to store it in our database. So we have multiple numbers. So let me show you what I mean by that. So let's call this dot password, and here we have to use this bcrypt function. So this is the one we are using. In that, we want to give the name of the field which we want to hash. So we are using this hash function which we have here, and we have to simply pass the password. And here you have to pass the number, that how strongly you want to encrypt the password. So the number, if the number is higher, it will take more time. So if I go with 12, that encryption will happen very quickly. But if I go with 14 or 16, the encryption process will take a little bit time. If the number is high, it will take more time. So I'll go with 12 because that's the industry and standard. So this is what we are doing. First, we are checking whether the password is modified or not, and second, we are simply encrypting the password. Once we're done with that, now we have to come to the third check: delete password confirm, because we don't want to store this delete like password confirm in our database field, because that's just for the verification purpose. We have created that particular field called confirm password, so we don't want to store that. So for removing, all we have to do is to do this call like this dot password confirm to undefined, and it will remove that. And at the end, we have to provide this next, so it will go to the next middleware. Pretty simple. Got it? So this is the first middle we have. Now let's work on the next middleware. Let me give you a couple of more examples. So again, we'll take this schema, we'll call this pre, and we have to call this save. And here we have to call this function next, and let's do the check. So we'll say if this dot modified means the password, then we have to simply do the another check. So we'll say, so that's the first check. Let's do the second check. We'll say this dot is new, then we have to simply return next. So what we are doing here, we are checking for two conditions. If the password is not modified and the password is new, is this new, then we have to simply go to the next middleware. So that's the simple check we are doing. I hope you guys have understood. Now we can come back here. We'll say this dot password changed at, because if the user have changed the password, we have to store this particular data in the database that when he has changed the password, and we'll call this next. That's simple. This one is the optional one I have created, but this is how you can do it. Now let's give me the one more example. So let's take this user schema, we'll call it pre, and in that we have to check for a condition. We'll call this find. So we have to give this one and call find and slash, and then we have to simply build this particular normal function called function next, and here we have to do the check. So first we have to check this point to the current query. So whenever user will make any query in any one of our endpoint, this is the find method we are using to check the query which the user is passing. So once we have the query because of this find method, then we'll call this dot find, and then we have to simply pass the active. And this is the special method we have in the Mongoose where you can change the status of the user by saying active to false or true. In that way, you can simply control the user accessibility. So we are using this particular method to change his accessibility, and then we are simply calling the next method. So these are the three demo I showed you. We're going to use one of them in our application, but this is how you can create multiple middleware for multiple layer verification. Once you're done with that, now we can come back here. Now we have to build some of the methods which allow us to verify the password. So this is the method I'm going to call it. You have to use this keyword called method, and then you have to give the name of the method. So I'll say compare correct password, because when the user will provide his password and the password we have encrypted in the database, we have to simply compare both the password and then we allow them to have an access. So we'll take this async, and it's going to receive the two things: the candidate password and the password which is coming from our database. We'll have this user password, and we have to simply validate that. And how we can do it, we already have this particular library, the package bcrypt package, and we're going to simply use this compare function and we'll pass both the password. Because the reason why we are using this bcrypt function, why we are not comparing straight away, because the password we have stored in the database is in the encryption form. So when we'll use this package, is going to decrypt and then it's going to do the comparison. So this is the method we have for correct password. This is the 1, 2, 3, and this is the method we have built. Let's build one more method for, so let's call this schema. We'll call this method, and we're going to simply call this password change after. So once the user will change the password, what we have to do? So that kind of logic you can also assign. Maybe you want to send emails, or maybe you want to send some sort of data variable in the database. You can do tons of things, but we are going with a simple approach. We'll say password change after, and we'll say function. In that we have to simply receive the JWP timestamp, because when the user will create his or her account, we have to send the JWP token in the browser, which contain all the information about the authentication. So in that we have to simply check if this dot password change at means this particular variable exists in the user data field, means he changed the password. Then we have to simply get the time. So we'll take this pass item, we'll say this dot password change at, and we have to get the time, and we have to simply convert that. Pretty straightforward. Okay, if this particular field exists in our user model, then we have to simply perform and check the timestamp, and at the end we have to simply do the comparison. So we have this timestamp, and we have to check the timestamp which is we have stored in the database string, and that's the comparison. It will return either true or false, but by default we want to send it to false, and that's the simple method we have. Hope so far things are clear to all of you guys. We have built this couple of demo pre-hook, and these are the two methods we have used for comparing the password and changed after. Now all we have to do is to simply export this model. So we'll take this const user, we'll say mongoose model, we'll say user, give the exact, and we have to simply give this user schema. And now we have to simply import the user model, and that's the only thing we have to do here. That's the only thing we have to do here in the user model. It can be more complex, but this is the simplest and most powerful way to create the authentication using the MongoDBs, which just looks pretty good. We're done with the user model, and now we have to work on the auth controller. So come back here. We already installed all of these two packages. We have imported that. Now we can start working straight away. So come back here. First thing, we have to build a function called sign token, because we are using JWT, means JSON Web Token, to create the token for the authenticator purpose that's going to be stored in the cookie form, and that's what we're going to retrieve for the logging and checking multiple condition. So let's try to build that sign token. In that we have to receive couple of things, the ID, and this ID is going to be the user ID. Then we have to simply return JWT sign, and in that we have to simply pass the ID. Then we have to pass the process dot end, and we already have the string which we have defined in our config file. So if I open this one, this is the string we're going to use it for generating that JWP token. So simply copy this one, and this is the one we have. That's what we're going to utilize it, and it must be at least 32 characters. So let me type this one so you guys won't forget that. Copy, and that's what we have to pass here. So in that way we can use this particular string variable to create our token. Once we have that one, in that we have to pass couple of information like the expiry, when we want to expire our token, and the same thing we can access from our environment variable. Simply copy, and we want this token to be accessed after 90 days, or you can type any date. So I'll go with this 50 or 90. Let's bring 90, perfect, because that's what we follow in the industry. So copy, and that's what we can simply paste here. Like after 90 days this token will be expired, and user has to simply re-log in our application. So that's what we'll do. It will generate the token. Once we have this particular function, now we have to build one more internal function, and again everything is covered extensively in this particular API, so make sure to follow it if you really want to build in an advanced way. So make sure to complete this project. After that, take this one. So this is the one we have. Now we can come back here, and now we have to create and send the token. So let's create another internal function. We'll say create send token, and in that we have to receive more function. So we have to receive the user, the entire user object, like name, email, ID, all of things. We have to also send the status code, and we have to take the request and response. So these are the things we're going to receive in this particular function, and this function is going to be executed when the user will log in or when the user will create account. So we'll take this, and we have to get the token, which is very easy. We'll call this sign token, and in that we have to pass the ID of the user. Provide this. it will generate the token for this particular user, and it will contain all of this information. Once we have the token, now after that we have to do a couple of things. We'll check this request dot cookie, and in that we'll say jwt. I'm calling jwt. You can call whatever you want, and in that we have to simply pass the token. We'll pass the expire, and it's going to take the date. So we'll take this new date, and that will take the date dot now, and we have to simply provide all the date. So it's totally up to you that what date you want to set. So here we have this cookie expired to 90 days. After 90 days it will expire, and let's pass that one, and let's convert it into second. So first we have to simply multiply by 24, then multiply by 60, then 60, and then we have to multiply with this 1000. So it's in the millisecond. So once we have this expired, now we have to check this HTTP only. So this API can be used on like secure system or unsecure, like means HTTPS or HTTP only. So we'll say true, but here we're going to build a small logic. So we'll say that secure request dot secure, otherwise we'll say request dot header, and that will say x forwarded proto, and that's going to be equal to https. So what I'm doing here, if it's secure then take the secure object, if it's not secure then take the unsecure object. So what I'm doing here, I'm telling to my cookie, if it's secure then take the secure version, if it's not secure then take the unsecure version, because I want to run this API in both secure or unsecure. So this is the exact setup you have to follow. If you want to know about the cookie storage with this particular method, there is tons of documentation is there. You can simply read about it, and you can add multiple variables in that in your cookie. But this is the most advanced one we follow in the industry. So our cookie is ready. Once we have the cookie ready, then we have to simply remove password from the output, because we don't want to expose the user password. So let's remove that from the output. So we'll take this user dot password to undefined. So in that way user will not have the password. It is there in the database, but it will not have in the output, because we're going to send the user information as well, but I don't want to send the user password. So then we have to simply send the response. We'll say status code status, in that we have to say this status code. We're going to send the information in the form of JSON, and we'll say status is going to be success, means user have created or login successfully. Then we have to send the token, and then we have to send the entire data of the user, means user. And that's the only thing we have to do here in this create send token. So what we are doing, first we are getting the user object, then status code, request and response, then we are getting the token, then we are sending the cookie based on the expiry date and secure format, and then we are sending this particular one to the user back. So these are the two internal functions we have, which we're going to use in login and sign up. Close this one, and now we have to work on the actual function, because most of the functionality is already done. We have to build the simple logic. So now we have to work on the sign up. So we'll say exports dot sign up is going to be an async, and that we have to receive this request, response and next. Then we have to simply get the new user, because user will create his account by calling this particular endpoint. We'll call this await user model we are using, and we are calling this create method. In that we have to simply pass the data. We already have this particular user model, and we are calling this create function. This is the one we have. All of this function and model we have built, that we have already on that as a, which we can simply call it. Pretty good. Come back here. Now we have to simply pass all the information. So this is the one. We have to pass the name, which we have in the request body dot name. Simply replicate this one, and we already have the email in the body. We have the password, and we have the confirm password. And this data is coming from the body, because when the user will provide all of this data, is going to be available in the endpoint in the body, and that's what we are getting. So once we have all of this, and that's what we are taking the name, we are taking the email. This is already defined. and we are defining the role as well already, but we are taking password and password confirm. So come back here on the authentication. Once we have all of this information, now we have to simply pass all of this to our create token and send. So let's call this create send token and pass the user, new user. We have to pass the status codes to be 201 for create, and we have to pass the request and response. And that's the only thing we have to do here. So that's the only thing for our sign up. And now we have to work on the login. So let's call this login, export, login. Exactly the same thing we have to do. Request, response, next. Then we have to get the user. So we have to get the data like password and email from the body. So we'll take this email and password, and that's coming from request.body. Once we have this information, now we have to simply validate whether the user have provided these two information or not. We can do this verification in the front end, but I want to keep it more secure, so I will do it in the back end. So let's take this. We'll check if the email and password exist, which we can do it very easily. We'll say if email is not there and the password is not there, then we have to simply send this particular response. Status is going to be 400 JSON, and we'll say status is going to be fail, and we'll set the message call please provide email and password. That's pretty fine. That's the first check. Now if the user have provided the email and the password, now we have to do the verification with the password we have stored in the database. So we'll take this to check if the user exists in our database and the password is correct. We'll say the user, we'll call the user, and we have to simply call this particular method called find only. This is the method we have in the Mongoose, which is a very straightforward. All we have to do is to simply check, send the email, pass the email, and we have to simply get the password. And here we are using a special method called select, because in the output we are not displaying the user password. So we have to tell that we need to take this password during this function call so we can compare it. So we'll say select and we'll call it password plus password. So this is the method which we can call in the function to get the specific data from the database. So once we have that particular user, you can see this is the function we have called it. Here we have this, and here we are setting the password, user password to undefined, means we don't want to throw this password in the at the successful function call. But here we need, but when it's come to the login, we need that password for comparing purpose. Now once we have that, we can say if user, and we have built this particular method which we're going to call it. So we'll say await user. This is the method I'm talking about. So this is the method correct password, and we have to simply pass this two information. Come back here. We'll say correct password. We'll pass the password of the user which he have written and the password from the database. So we'll say user dot password. Pretty good. Once we have that, here we have to simply send the response. We'll say status 401 JSON, and we'll say status call fail if it not matches, and we'll display the message. We'll say incorrect email or password. So this is the second check. We are comparing the password from the user from the database, or if it's passed this particular condition, at the end we have to suddenly send the successful response. So we'll call this create send token, and we'll pass the user status code 200 for OK, request and response. Pretty good. And that's the login functionality we have here. So first we have get the information like email and password. We have checked whether the email and password user have provided. Once we done with that particular check, then we are checking whether the password is correct or not. If it's correct, then we have to simply send the token back to the user and log him into our application. That's pretty simple. That's what we are calling here. So this is the login. This is the internal function we have. Sign up, login is done. And now let's build one more endpoint which allow us to buy the membership. So we can come back here. We'll call this membership. It's going to be a very straightforward. We'll say buy membership, async, request, response, and next. First we have to get the update, because that's what we're going to do. Is by default it's not membership. we have to simply update that to the membership the user wants to buy. So we'll call it await user model, and we'll call it find by id and update, because we are updating. That's a pretty straightforward name. All we have to do is to simply pass this request.body user id, then we have to simply pass the data we want to update. So we'll say membership type, what I have called membership type. Simply copy that one, and that's what I'm going to replace, and I have to replace with the data. We'll call it request.body membership type, and it will update the data in our database. And we have to run the validator as well. So let's call this one new true, and we'll say run validators, we'll call it true. So whatever validator we have assigned in our entire model, that's going to be run once again to check all the condition which we have assigned. So that's pretty straightforward. Looks pretty good. Hope things are clear to all of you guys. These are the basics things which I have covered, and that's the only thing we have. So once the user do the update and take the membership, we have to simply send the response. So we'll say status code is going to be 200 JSON, and we'll pass the title. We'll say your account, and I can send the user with the updated information. That's pretty fine. So that's the only thing we have to do here. What we have done, first we have used this method to find and update the user information to his membership, and that's the only thing we have to do here. Looks pretty good. So we have taken this. These are the internal functions: sign up, login, and membership. So far things are clear to all of you guys. So we are done with this user model. We have done with this auth controller. So close that one, and this is what we have. Close this one as well. Now we have to work on the router, and let's work and build the 3 endpoints: login, sign up, and buy membership. So that's going to be a very small one. So what we're going to do is, let's come back here, and first we have to import express, then we have to import the auth controller, the one which we have built just now, and that's coming from the, let's say, API controller, auth controller. Once we have these two, now we have to build the router. We'll call it router, and this router is coming from express router. Once we have that, now we have to build the endpoint. So we'll say router dot post, because we're going to post the data, and let's build the endpoint. So this is the endpoint slash sign up, and we're going to call the function we have built, and that function is available in our auth control. So we'll call auth controller dot sign up, replicate it, change this to login. This one is login, and this one is membership, buy membership, and this one is buy membership. Save it. Pretty good. If I come back to the controller, you can see these are the methods we have built, which we have exported, and that's what we have called. And that's the only thing we have to do here. Once we're done with that, simply export the router. So we'll say model export router, and that's our router is ready. This is pretty straightforward. Looks pretty good. Close that one, close that one. So we're done with this controller, we are done with this, close this one, we are done with this router, and we are done with this as well. So far things are pretty good to me. No issue we have. We are done with all of these model, router, and controller functions. Now we have to work on the app.js. So let's come back here. Here we're going to receive the express, then we have to import the cross, because we want to allow access in all the endpoints, in all the domains. And you can see here we have installed the cross, and using the exact version you have to use. Now we can come back here. We have to do the configuration of the user model. So we need user, we'll say user router, and that's coming from slash API router and user router. That's what we are getting. Pretty good. Now we can come back here. We have to run the middleware. So this is the middleware we have to get. So first we have to get the express, then we have to call this app.use, and then we have to assign express.json. If you don't provide this, you're not able to store the data in the database, because we have to use this station. And here we can define the limit. So like how big file you want the user to upload. So I will go with 100 KB, which is too big. Depending on your application, you can simply provide that one. So 100 is perfect. We have this. Now we have to use this app.use, and that we have to use the cross, and let's provide on a global object. Let's pass the option. So we'll give this star, and it's going to be a cross as a global one. Now we can come back here. We'll take this routers app.use, and let's build the endpoint. So we'll say /API v1. You can give any version. For example, you have multiple version of your backend, so that's what we generally follow in the industry. v1 for first version, v2 for second version, v3 for third version. So this is the structure I'm building. You can build any structure, but just follow this. This is the v1 version and the user, because that's the data set we are using. That's why I'm giving this user. If I have multiple data sets for the NFT, so I will call NFT. In that, I'm going to store all the NFTs and perform all the authentication related to the NFT in that. But we are focusing on the user authentication. That's why I've given this name. So try to give the relevant name to your project. And I'm going to simply call this user router. So whenever any request will come to the user endpoint, it's going to get through this and it's going to get into the router, and from there it will automatically take whatever request user have made. So once we have that, now we have to simply export this app, and this app we're going to import in the server file. So that's the only thing we have to do. What we have done, we have simply built the router. You can see when the request will come, it will automatically take any one of this endpoint which user have called. Close that one. That's the app file we have. Now we can work on the server file, because server file is the starting point for our application. So come here and let's work on it. So here you can see that we have used nodemon server.js, means this is the starting point. And this looks pretty fine. Now we can start working on the server straight away. So come back here. First thing we have to do is we have to import the mongoose, and that's coming from the mongoose. Then we have to import the next, because we want to run the backend and the front end in the same route, in the same domain. So that's the configuration we're going to do. So it will start the backend and the front end in the same domain. Because sometimes what happened that you want to run your backend to different endpoint, means different domain, and front end in different domain. But here I'm focusing in one particular domain to run this backend and front end. So we'll take this required next, and we have to do a couple of configuration. We'll take this dov env, because we are using environment variable. Let's import that particular package. Then we have to do the configuration. We'll take this dev if process.environment is .env. If it's not production, then it will take the development. Simple. We can come back. We'll take this next server. We'll take this next, and then we can simply pass the variable we have created called dev. So it will take whether we are in development or production automatically. Now we can come back here. We'll take this handler. We'll take the next server get request handler. So we got our handler. Now we can come back here, and now we have to configure our .env file. So we'll take the package, then we have to configure the path. So ./config.env, because it's in the root directory. Now we can come back here. Now we have to import our app model. That's coming from our ./app. Once we have our app model, now we have to build the connection. So building a connection with the database. So we'll say db stand for database, and we're going to say process.env. And now we have to replace the password with actual password. So we'll take this data. This is the exact variable we have to take. Simply copy, and that body we have to pass, and on that we have to call this particular method replace, and we have to pass the variable which we want to replace with the variable. So I'll take this string, and now we have to simply copy this portion, because this is what I want to replace with the password. And we already have the password in the same config file, so simply copy, and that's what we have to pass. So what this particular function will do, it will replace the password with the actual password. And now we have to simply call a couple of methods on that. So we'll take this mongoose. Okay, I call this mondo, so simply change this to mongoose, and that's what we have to call here. We have to call this connect function, and we have to pass this database string, and we have to also pass the configuration, because this configuration is very important, and the package version we are using for Mongoose, this is the exact configuration you have to do. If you go with the updated one, it has a different configuration. So this is the exact configuration you have to do as per the package we have used. So we'll say use new URL parse to use create index true, and the last one is going to be use find and modify false. So this is the exact configuration you have to do as per this particular package. So this is the package we are using, and this one has this particular configuration. Looks pretty good to me, no issue we have so far. And I can see here we have this user, so we have to simply replace this one. So this one looks fine, new user, and replace this one, use create index. It's going to return a promise, we have to resolve that, and we'll say then, and that we're going to simply receive. We'll console log out this particular message, database connected successfully or successful. You can type whatever you want. So in this way, if our database is successfully connected, we're going to simply console log out this particular message in our terminal. Once we have built the connection, now we have to simply define the port, that what port we want to use, and this is the port we're going to use it both for production and development. Now we can take this next server, in that we have to define the prepare then, and in that we have to define both the server and the front end. So we'll take this app.get, we'll define this star, and we'll say request response. In that we have to simply call this return handle, and we'll pass this request and response. So in this way, what will happen, that our server will start and is going to have all the requests which user going to make on the endpoint we have developed. So this one is for the server, and now we have to work for the front end. So we'll take this app.listen port, and it's going to take the callback, and we have to simply start our server. So we'll say console.log app running on port, and I want to show the dynamic. So change this to template tutorial, change this one as well, and we can display our port. So our port will also run. So this is the exact configuration you have to do. In the first one, we are running the backend, and the second one, we are running our front end. So that looks pretty good. We are done with this entire server file, no issue we have so far, everything's working absolutely fine. All of this configuration we have done successfully, and this is the .env database connections and the server and the front end. Close this one. Now we are done with this entire API section. So this is the auth controller, this is the user model, and this is the router, and we have the app and the server. So we're done with this entire front backend API. Now what we can do is we have to start this particular server file. So open up your terminal, and if I come back here, you can see I'm using this particular command to start the dev environment. So all we have to do is to run npm run dev. It's going to start our application, and here I'm getting some sort of error. So it says database name must be a string. Okay, I know what is the problem is happening in our database string. So come back here in the database, and you can see this is the name of the project I have given, project 0. So make sure to give this particular name. This is the name you have to provide in the database string. So come back here, and here we have to type project 0 and save it. Once you do that, it will fix the issue, and simply start that server one more time, npm run dev, and this time you can see things are looking fine. Database connection successfully, and app running on port 3000. So far things are pretty good. Our server is running fine, and we have successfully connected. If you make a request, you can see this is our front end, and our front end backend is also running absolutely fine. So that looks pretty good, no issue we have so far. Definitely we're going to test all of this functionality, and we're going to connect in our front end, but it's working good. Now what we have to do is come back here in the server file, and this is also looking good, no issue we have here.